And we are rolling, right? We are rolling? Okay, good. So this is the thing about when we get together, we don't really need an agenda.
No.
That's not something that's going to work. And this is kind of a co-show now. So we are right now on Durand On Demand, but we are simultaneously on Ditch Digger CEO.
Absolutely. We're simultaneously.
So who's going to ask the questions?
I say, Chris and Steven, you guys kind of think about this, but I feel like we could just like go with, hey, let's talk about, I want Ditch Digger CEO to know about this crazy buddy of mine, David here, right? And so I think we can get into that. And then David can come back and hit me with a question kind of regarding the same type of thing, right?
Back and forth. So we've got Steven here, the producer of Durand On Demand, and we've got Chris here, the producer of Ditch Digger CEO, and this whole thing's just going to work its way out. Who's going? You go first with the question.
It's going to be a hot mess, but we're going to have fun.
It is. That's true. All right. So Gary, we got together a year ago. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, we get together more often than that, but we got together on the show a year ago, and we were talking about the progression of the businesses that you have been building and everything else that's happening in your life.
Yeah.
And there's always a lot. Let's do a year in review for you.
So year in review for me is I've got a couple businesses that have sold, and one is about to sell, and another one is sold, and little ones, smaller ones that I have a partner that's a CEO that really wanted to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
And I kind of let these partners and these friends of mine are minority owners, usually 20 to 49%. But because they're building it, because they're running it, I kind of let them determine sometimes if they want to sell
when the exit is
for their own best interest, their own family best interest. So I've had one of those happen. Yeah.
Okay, you live more in a year than most people do in a decade. But when you do this, do you sell to private equity and then operate as a minority?
Yeah, so we've done this with a company I still own 30% of, called Pipeview America, and it's grown very nicely. And my CEO, my founding partner with me, is running it still today.
Yeah.
He'll run it till it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's probably worth a little over $100 million now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a spectacular guy, and it's going to be fun because second bite of the apple is going to be a very nice bite compared to what we sold at. So if you find the right partner, it's a great thing to do. If you don't find the right partner, do it by yourself. Do it on your own because you don't need a bad partner. So the paving businesses never have taken a partner. A bunch of my businesses I've never taken a partner. I've got the other. So two things I've talked about last time I was on was RCC, roller compacted concrete. Started a new business a year ago, RCC.
Yeah.
That business did about 20 million in revenues in its first year, and this year we'll do closer to 40 million. My goal for that partner was to do $100 million in revenues within 8 or 10 years.
Okay.
We'll do $100 million within 5 years. And that partner is going to do amazing, but he's changing the world of concrete pavements. He's changing the industry. Walmart, Target, Home Depot, every one of these big owners of real estate that have big distribution centers will only want to use this pavement, in my opinion.
This because the technology you guys have developed.
It's technology. It's 3D paving of concrete, 12 inches thick by 40 foot wide. And paving 3D concrete, but not just paving it, okay? It's paving concrete that will be 10,000 PSI compared to 3,000 or 4,000 PSI, right? 5,000 maybe if you use accelerators, right? And different chemicals. But bottom line is 10,000 PSI concrete that will last hundreds of years, okay? With no maintenance for 20, 30 years. The pavement they're used to, even if it's concrete, is it's going to last 20, 30 years. And steel inside the concrete will corrode in that time. And they're going to have some issues. But 20, 30 years is pretty good. This pavement's going to be hundreds of years of life, like Roman concrete.
Yeah.
And so Walmart loves it. The railroads are loving it. Our customers are loving it. And we've got an abundance of opportunity in that business to grow to 100 million within 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And that business is going to lead the industry. So it's going to be fun. So that business is growing. My partner is as good as I thought he was. David's amazing. Maybe something in the name, huh? But
about it.
But and then one of the cool things that we've discovered in our technology company, Site Technology, that we're rolling this out across all of our customers is warranties in my industry have really been basically very weak, if existing at all, in pavements, in roofs, in facades, landscaping, all the things that Site Technology oversees now, all the verticals they oversee. The warranties are very weak because what you have is you have a property manager and owner, and then you have contractors and maybe an engineer that are there on the job when it gets done originally. But if there's a warranty, nobody sees it after the fact. So if there's a 5-year warranty, A lot of times the property manager changes, the contractor's out of business, the engineering company is not around anymore. And so warranties very seldom get executed when there's real issues, when a pavement doesn't last as long as it should, or a roof or anything, right? And so what we've created in site technology now, because we're flying every Walmart property in the world today, every Prologis property in the world today, and many other customers. Now, as we fly this, and AI picks up every flaw in that vertical, again, pavements, roofs, landscapes, or facades. It's going to be more in the future. But as it picks up every little flaw, now a flag goes up. A yellow flag. Hey, man, you got a little problem over here in the northwest corner of that parking lot.
Yeah, like perpetual opportunities for improvement, work contracts.
Well, here's what it is. It's all that, but now it's a no-hide warranty that we've developed. So it's a no-hide warranty. Yeah. Warranties nowadays in my industry, everybody hides from them, right? Yeah. Whether it's the property manager that made a mistake, hired the wrong contractor. Yeah. It's a contractor that says, we didn't do that, or we told you not to do that, or whatever it was, right? Yeah. I mean, now the contractor can't hide. The property manager can't hide. Nobody can hide from this warranty. And so it's a yellow flag first to say, hey, you got a little issue here or there. And the contractor gets the warning as well as the property manager, as well as maybe an engineering company in the middle. But now when there's a big problem, and it's definitely something that should be covered, the AI picks that up. Now a red flag goes up and says, you got a problem in that northwest corner of that parking lot. It's failed. It's a 20-year pavement to the 10-year warranty, and in 5 years, it looks terrible, right? Yeah. The AI tells you this, and here's what you need to do to fix it. Now, at least it gives that contractor an opportunity to get in there and look at it, right? Mm-hmm. The project manager and the property manager, they come together and say, oh, what do we do to fix this? And they fix it before anything happens. So it's going to take our industry to a whole different level. So those are the exciting things in my businesses today. We've got a lot of great people doing cool things to advance our industries every day. But those are a couple of fun things that we're having a blast with.
Yeah.
So, so back to you now. Okay. We didn't get the story on Ditch Digger CEO, Chris. So it's got to be more about this character than it is about me today. All right. So Dave,
which is unusual for me on my own show because we're on both shows.
That's okay though. They need to hear this on your show too. You know?
Okay. So I'll do the year in review and then you can ask other questions because it's been a crazy, crazy year. This last year, at the Pinnacle, I got married. One of my
Congratulations.
Dreams, of course, you know, Miranda. My son was ordained a priest. I have a son that graduated. I have 9 kids and 9 grandkids. So the numbers are big here.
Wait, it's 9 and 9 now?
Yeah. 9 kids, all, so my now stepchildren are going to college next year and still in high school. So, you know, they're not married or engaged, but the rest of the kids are married, engaged, or a priest. And so, and technically I have 2 grandchildren on the way, one in a couple of weeks. And then
dude, how old are you?
One, I'll be 56 in a month.
You look great, man. You know what? You make me look like I'm 80 now.
Dude, okay? You look good for 75.
Well, yeah, for 75, you're right. I'm not so bad, right?
How old? You're like 60.
62.
62.
I just turned 62.
That's right. So anyway, so that happens. I acted my first film last year, which I'm not even an actor. It was with James Franco. And it was crazy. And Tommy Lee Jones, by the way. Whoa. And I had 2 scenes, you know, quite a few lines, which, you know, normally people are sitting around the acting, you know, just trying to get it as an extra. And then they have 1 line. So I had this opportunity where the first lines I ever had were directly to James Franco. I'm a cop, and I'm kind of interrogating him as he's getting ready to kill somebody in this film. And it was fascinating. I loved the experience because one of the things that they say is that really great actors help you become a better actor, act better.
Sure.
It's kind of like dancing. If you're dancing next to someone that can't dance, that for real throws you off. And fighting too. I remember it was so funny when I was a black belt. Still, I'm a black belt. It doesn't go away. I'm just an old one now, so that does matter. But I remember fighting really great black belts when we would at least spar, right, just to work out. And you have this like kind of, you know, really you don't get hurt because you both know what you're doing, and you can flow for like an hour with a great workout, and then you fight somebody that's like totally inexperienced, and it is clashing and just awkward. Anyway,
so common with all this, right? I enjoyed wrestling since I was very young through high school and through high school. Same thing, right? I only got better as I challenged myself to get my butt kicked by better wrestlers. Mm-hmm. Because
of course you irritated the heck out of them though, because
yeah, I mean, no, it's so often, right? It's the case in anything. If you just want to be mediocre, you can be mediocre real easy, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to be great, then find greatness, right?
Yeah.
And aspire to befriend them,
Yes.
right? Even if it's about getting your ass kicked, befriend them so that you get better by being with them, right?
Yeah.
And in business, we do this every day, and I know you do too. It's so important, right? To find the best in the world of what you do and say, how do I aspire to be better than them? First, as good as them, and then better. And if you can befriend them, and usually you can if you got your personality, right? Now it's now you get to understand who they are, how they got there, and then and now okay, and how can I'm friends, but how do I kick their ass financially in business now? Right?
Yeah, how do you get going on it? Well, I mean, you've actually kind of drew out the parallel that I was going to make, and why I'm mentioning this about Franco is that so there's 3 different ways. So I've been involved in film from an investor perspective and just some writing things, but I've never acted. So this particular director, Damien Lichtenstein, he did like 3,000 Miles at Graceland.
I've seen his name. Yeah.
Sure. So he says, here's how it's going to happen. The first scene, you're going to do it exactly the way the script is written. Okay. The second scene, you're going to do a minor improvisation based upon how it went. And the third thing, you just make the point of the scene however you want. And so I watched Franco progress in the way that he did that. And what he did was he was kind of disrespecting me as a police officer, and he effectively disrespected me, where authentically I moved away from acting and I was like, hey, like you're going to do what you're told. Yeah. And it just drew it out. Anyway, I'm not right. I might win the, I know so little about Hollywood that is it an Oscar than you in films? Or is it, yeah, I mean, how it works, Emmys, Oscars. But I might win Officer 2, the Emmy for Officer 2 in a specific film, if there were some sort of an award.
Do you have to lobby for that award?
Since I would be the only one that actually acted in that. There's going to be no awards. I certainly am not even a good actor, and there was this too short of a scene.
How much fun was that, though?
It was so much fun. But that was the point that I'm making, is as minor and irrelevant as my role in that was, even in that tiny little experience, I could feel what it was like to be around somebody who was brilliant in that and how they bring it out. Why is that so important? Because for you and I, if we're with a less experienced person and we just like do our thing, they're going to come up to that level. They're going to the people who get it will be attracted to that and go further. So I did that. Then I had 2 books come out. Both of them were bestsellers.
All right.
And so it's been a busy year. And I almost forgot. Sold one of my companies for 9. So I can't say because we're under NDA not to disclose what it was, but we sold it to HIG, who you're probably familiar with, massive private equity company. Yeah. Our first private equity owner, when we sold it the first time, both for 9 figures. The second one is multiples compared to the first, but was a great partner, Bertram.
So 9 figures. Does that count the sense side?
No, it does not.
It's not that.
No, it would have been.
That'd be like 11 figures.
That would be an 11-figure business if that was the case. That would be pretty cool. But
that's awesome. That's awesome.
So it's fine. And just like you were talking about too, when we sold it the first time. We remained partners, minority partners. And the second bite at the apple was worth more than the first bite at the apple because you grow it by that much. And so it's nice to be able to do that. And to your point also, bringing many people into that fold who become millionaires or more than a millionaire.
It's a blast,
who never would have experienced that before. That is fun. And they earn every penny because they're driving the business, but they're uniquely attached to the opportunity to do well.
That's the most fun, is seeing, celebrating with so many people.
Yeah.
Right? It's not fun to eat alone, not fun to celebrate alone, right? I mean, and build a business is not fun doing it alone.
Well, and you only need so much.
And there's advantage when you're a dumbass like me. It's really easy to build a business with a lot of people because you just can't build much on your own.
Yeah. And why do you build it too? I mean, there is a point where the money really doesn't matter. I mean, I remember hearing this one time. I think I mentioned it yesterday. We were guesting on another podcast even, but somebody said one time that, for every million you make for every million you have after 10 million or 20 million, you're just a million more an asshole or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember thinking maybe that's true. And then when the numbers added up, I kept moving the bar on when that would be. But it is true that if you're thinking of it that way, it can be true. But if you're magnanimous about things and you realize money's only good for the good that it does, then you're not working for the money.
So I know you're doing it for the right stuff, and I know that your history has been that. I've been getting involved as you helped me get involved a little more with this little college down the street here.
Oh yeah,
Ave.
That's great.
And what an amazing place it is, right?
Yeah.
And I've got to be friends with some of these kids, right? Looked at starting some business with them as you did the Shark Tank.
Now, did you start with one of them? Because I know we did the Shark Tank together.
Not yet, but we're back and forth on some stuff. But there's a couple other kids I'm doing some things with and mentoring and all that. But either way, bottom line is your reputation there is amazing. Everybody loves you, knows everybody knows who you are, and they love what you're about. And it's because you're there to share your experiences, which is the most valuable thing we have, right? That is the wisdom we've gained through the experiences in our lives. Yeah. And you share that with these kids constantly and others, right? This podcast is an example of that, yours and mine. Yeah. And if we can do that, right? Your goal is to get to there, right? That's our goal, right? Amen. That's the most important goal in our lives. This is a temporary thing. This for us, it's a paradise here, in my opinion. But it's going to be a much bigger paradise up there if we can get there, right? And I believe when you got some success like you have and our friends have, and right, you have a bigger burden, in my opinion. It should be an easy burden because now you have the financial wherewithal to do even better things than just share your experiences, right? You do both.
So do you. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I think that we have a friendship is that we have these common values that way.
Yes, because, Dave, I need you to invest in this. I need you to help these guys out. Hey, Rabine, I need a little help over here, right?
You've got some good people out there in the world that you're helping. That's for sure. You make a big difference.
That's what we need to do in our lives, though. It's so much fun.
And, I think about this a lot. Like, when... if people forget to connect the dots as to why we're doing things, this is like kind of an Aristotelian thing, but Aristotle, says that in order to be happy, which is the number one, that's the reason we do everything, is to be happy. And he said the only thing you pursue for its own sake is happiness, but you pursue wealth for happiness, power, influence for happiness, clothing, food for happiness. So happiness is the only thing we pursue for its own sake, but he said the only way you can have it is to be virtuous. And this is what's so fascinating to me. Is that what that does, it gets a person to connect the why to everything they're doing. Sure. Why are you building this business? Who are you going to help by it? Who are you going to become by it? And, I look at these people that they'll eat right and they'll teach their kids to eat right and they're very diligent with their money and they're very conscientious about all these different types of things. And they go to get a good education. They do all these things. Why? So they can retire early or so they can retire and for 20 years of pickleball? Like what in the world is that? Like that is like the silliest payout ever. And then they spend 45 years working hard from age 20 to 65, working as hard as they can to develop this great 20 years worth of retirement without ever considering what the heck happens after that. It's like flabbergasting when there's that short-term thinking there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I lost a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, one of my favorite people in the world was Bernie Marcus, the founder of Home Depot. Mm-hmm. Bernie asked me this is 14 years ago, be one of the CEOs in the organization. I think I talked about in the last podcast called Job Creators Network. Yes. And so I've been involved in that ever since the beginning. And with that organization, we really helped launch Charlie Kirk. I met Charlie, started mentoring Charlie.
Was it Charlie at your house just recently?
Yeah, in Naples. He was here in Naples. Well, we were going to do it at my house. So we ended up doing it at the yacht club because he didn't have enough room in my house. I started inviting people, and it got to be, within hours, got to be crazy the amount of people who wanted to hang out with Charlie and listen to Charlie's, kind of updates. Yeah. So anyway, no, that was a few weeks ago. But bottom line is, this organization, JCN, gave me the ability to do cool things as far as helping Charlie out and getting a lot of people that cared about our country's future and our country's children's future. In front of, Charlie in front of people with money that helped support him, right? That believed in him. And those people have been really invaluable to him still. But Bernie Marcus was one of those. And Bernie was a spectacular person. He died on election day, actually. And, he's looking down very happy, in my opinion, about where our country is going at this point. Because
he was not quiet about it.
He was not quiet, very outspoken. All the way up until he was 94, but probably 93 years old. You could see him on Fox News, and he looked like he was 75. And he all the way till his last days, his mind was perfectly sharp.
Super sharp.
So anyway, a great guy. But bottom line is, all he did the last 20 years of his life is say, how do I make sure this country stays a free country? How do I make sure Israel is in better shape when I leave this earth, right? And he did everything he could to make sure that happened. And boy, he made, I can say, so many differences that person made. And again, but bottom line is, for you and I, hopefully we can be that to other people, right? If whatever it is we got that helps us be the best we can be. If we can share that with people and they can get a little of that, I think we've done the right thing here on earth, and that's the fun. And hopefully when we're answering to that guy, he's saying, you're kind of a hillbilly, you probably don't belong here, but because you did a few nice things and a couple people learned from your hillbilly story, you're get through that little narrow gate there, you might fit, right?
You might fit, right? Exactly.
So, I'm not sure what that looks like actually, but I just got this vision, right? That if we do good things here and we're helping others more than we're. And by the way, I'm 100% positive, right? When we can do little things that create a benefit in other people's lives, we're definitely living a happier life.
Yeah.
If it's all about ourselves, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay, back to you though. Sorry about this. I want you to tell my guests. Okay, I know you've told your guests a little bit about your story, your rags to riches story. That's what we talk about, right?
Yeah.
Tell us where you started. Tell us where you went and where you're at now and where you're going in the future.
Well, I was born and raised. It's funny in a small town, Big Bend, Wisconsin, and on Durand Drive, which really sounds impressive. Until you know that it's about 200 yards long. It had about 8 houses on it. My grandfather built all of them except for ours, and he retired. But I grew up very modestly. My parents are wonderful people. My dad was a engineer. I'm one of 5. And, I think it's because my parents taught me just great moral, concrete values that I was able to move past things. But, we lived a modest life. It was fantastic. And because of that, I didn't think much about money. I was name brand ignorant. I was actually ignorant to so many things, Gary. It was amazing. I was racially ignorant. I was economically ignorant. I was politically ignorant, but I wasn't morally ignorant, which means that once those things are introduced to you, you can reconcile them pretty quickly.
For sure.
Because you know how to think. You know how to make judgments. And it was pretty easy to see where I was going to land as a result of that. And then when I was in college, although my whole family became either teachers or engineers, I knew there was something about business. I didn't really understand business. I didn't know what it was, and I wasn't really introduced to it, but there was something natural about that to me. Started selling Cutco knives. I did that for one summer as a salesperson.
What a great experience.
It was great. And I muddled through sales because I just didn't like it. And yet I forced myself to do it anyway. I didn't like making the phone calls. And I was much more inclined to lead. Like I just naturally enjoyed leading and inspiring and training. But I knew that if I wasn't willing to do the things that I didn't like, and I even knew it at that young age, I wouldn't be able to lead others who didn't want to do what they didn't feel like doing. Mm-hmm. And so I did it anyway. And then I went on to actually help build that company from about maybe 30 million to about 250 million. And I wrote their training programs. And
okay, tell me about that company, a little more about that company.
So people know Cutco knives because they have a college student that called them and came over to sell them.
Most people do, right?
Most people know it. I don't know how many millions of knives there are in the world.
I had 3
right
sets of Cutco knives.
You probably,
three different kids that my late wife Cheryl and I liked, cared about. Right, we're selling them.
Yep, always coming after it. So you learn a lot there. But what I loved about that is I learned so much about human nature. I learned why somebody would be motivated or not motivated. That's a hard job. You think about calling friends and family to sell them really expensive knives.
Yeah.
By the way, just the stigma associated with selling knives, that's enough.
Well, usually people have their sets of knives, right?
And they have the sets of knives, and these are expensive. They're brilliant and great, by the way. That's what makes it work. So you are forced to really embed excellent culture into your workplace in order for people to be attracted to it, and in order for them to stick around, in order for them to be motivated to do it. And I didn't look at that simply as an end. I looked at that as a laboratory because I knew that I was only going to be there for short. Well, I ended up being there for quite some time. But
how many years was it?
23 that I was with them, from 1989 to 2011.
Wow.
But I was able to start other companies while I was there. And that was the thing that was...
They allowed that.
Great. Yeah, they did. And so I did, and I started building them. And then when it got to the point where I had kind of like critical mass, I would only say it this way. One of my friends and mentors, who was the CEO of the company, fired me. And he did it, frankly speaking, he did it as a gift. He did it because he said, he goes, your mind is other places, and you need to go do the thing that you need to do. And that was a great thing. So then I was able to turn my attention fully to the other businesses that I was running. But at that point, I'd already had several books out, and I had built a few other companies, mostly in consulting and speaking. And in fact, here's a funny thing. So I was a best-selling author, and I had some books out there, and I was...
At what age did you start writing?
My first book came out when I was 29. But here's the really funny thing about it, though, is my resume would have been this resume. And you see this all the time. Best-selling author, sought-after speaker, okay, business builder and leader. But really, come on. I was in somebody else's game, building somebody else's business, writing. To be a best-selling author doesn't take much. I've had books that were best-selling books with 10,000 copies. And by the way, you sell 10,000 copies in 1 week, and what most people don't know is that puts you on the New York Times. Okay, so it doesn't take a lot of books to be a best-selling author. So, but I know what it's like to sell 100,000 copies or 10,000 copies or 5,000 copies in the first couple of months.
Yes, but what you knew then that most people don't have the guts to they might visualize and they might have a lot of confidence, but they don't have the guts to actually say it. You had the guts to say what you knew you were gonna be, and not many people have that. I've been laughed about many times in my life. I guarantee you, whether in front of my face and behind my back, because I really believed I was going to be the best at what I did in the world, right? And I was going to be the biggest commercial paving company in the country, and all these things, right? And I would tell people this, when I was, very small, and they'd laugh at me, but that would motivate me even more.
Yeah.
So for you to say this, when you say these things, now you have to strive to live up to it. Well, if you don't, you really look like an idiot, right?
Yeah, but I think that's my point. My point is, I think you were probably a little bit more bold, and maybe even more confident in what you were going to build. I was in this kind of in my head, I was like, man, that's a legitimate resume. And I was the youngest person inducted to the Hall of Fame of a company that recruited 100,000 people a year for 50 years.
Whoa.
So that was a real thing. But still, when I was walking into AT&T or I was walking into, UPS or whatever, Canada Trust, and giving a talk, I still felt like, I don't know. I mean, I know my resume looks good like that, but I don't want to have to describe my resume to somebody to convince someone that it is something. I want people to just see it and know.
Yeah.
And so I said, I have to go build something significant so that even if I walk in and I'm speaking to a Fortune 500 CEO, that Fortune 500 CEO, unless he's a founder, generally has respect for the guy who builds companies worth hundreds of millions of dollars and did it on their own and started it. So you have a peer relationship in a particular way, almost probably like athletes from two different genres would have a mutual respect. So
can I interrupt you one time?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
what I believe is this: you created an unfair advantage for you against others in anything you do in your future. When you went through that program, that Cutco program, and we're there all those years, you saw every nook and cranny of why they succeeded, how they duplicated this success over and over again, how they sold and how they differentiated to continue to be leaders in the market, right? You saw all those things, and you were part of building them as well, right? Mm-hmm. So that advantage you had when you go into the world of entrepreneurship is incredible. And I look at kids that work at McDonald's today or Taco Bell or wherever. If they can just understand the value of that job, that minimum wage job, maybe nowadays it's a little more than that, I guess, but bottom line is they understand the value of what that Taco Bell or McDonald's has done to build this business of duplication and this business of consistent customer service and all these things, right? They know that. They can say, gosh, if I can reproduce this in my lawn mowing business, into a landscaping business, into whatever, right? That's a great advantage. But many people don't. I think that many people don't see that in front of them because they feel they're in a dead-end job. They feel that I'm making minimum wage, right? I'm not worthy, but they are, right? And again, you'll see many people that go through that whole process at McDonald's or Home Depot or wherever, and they become leaders, they become owners, they become millionaires, right? But if they can take what they learn there and go outside of that, they'll be much wealthier, right? If they can do that, and you did that. You were in that process for that business for a long time, where most kids would be in, and then they would graduate college and get a sales job maybe because they learned sales in that organization. Yeah. You stayed in to learn every nook and cranny of it, which was a crazy.
And it was
advantage.
Like a laboratory. I was like, okay, you know what? If we change this part of the program, this number of people succeed at a higher level. Let's try this. Ooh, they went backwards. And not like, they certainly weren't like lab rats. They were human beings that I wanted to do well. So every single change we made was in earnest.
For sure.
But when you see that a change doesn't work, you can move it. But you're right. I mean, if a person would just go into any job and say, okay, my role here, to me, and by the way, you and I both know as owners, no role is insignificant. And you want everyone to know how significant their role is from the bottom to the top or anywhere in between. But if they can do that, if they can come in and say, boy, this organization is thriving. Why? This is like going back to school. I'm going to learn this, and then I'm going to go do it on my own. But I remember this, crazy enough, one of the chiefs, and I'm being very ambiguous about this because I have so many friends still in that business, and he's not there right now in the company. But one of the chiefs, I remember going to him and I said, you know what the biggest asset we have here is? We recruit 100,000 college students a year, more than any company, period, we do. Those people are going to go on, in fact, I think this is true, to found Uber, to found the number of companies that you list that are famous out there where they sold Cutco for a period of time. I say, here's what we need to do. We need to, Shark Tank, actually what we're doing at the Institute at Ave Maria is what I suggested there. But I said, we should have them propose all sorts of business ideas and models, and we would put a small investment into those and own a certain percentage of it. And, you know, these are sharp people. If that company would have done that, they would be worth $50 billion today with the people who want to launch their companies that they launched through that.
Yeah.
But you know what he said to me? The only thing our people know how to do is sell Cutco.
What?
And I was like,
wow.
How did you get to this level in the organization with that mentality?
For sure.
And by the way, it was a coattail thing. I saw and it was one of the, sometimes people make it
through
business
that happens.
coattails, and you see it. I would call it a wake effect, really. It's a drafting effect in racing, where if you could draft behind the fastest racer the entire time, your race moves really quickly, but not with the same effort because you're in front of somebody bigger who's more powerful.
You only go so far, and eventually you'll burn yourself out.
Because that person's going to turn, and you're going to be in the wind yourself, and you see that. But a lot of people can draft their way to millions, and then they're in fine shape anyway.
Sure.
And you know what's interesting? I've seen people draft their way to millions and become very savvy investors, where they weren't great leaders, but they're great investors.
Yeah,
and so they turn their talents in another way, which is quite impressive.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I did that, and then I started building the companies. But that whole point that I'm making is I remember thinking to myself, when I was around a person who had only a certain amount of experience, they were pretty impressed with it was a legitimate resume.
Yeah.
But still, if I was around a person like you or me now, and I said, best-selling author, sought-after speaker, business builder, and there was nothing behind it that said, well, what business did you build? How many copies did you sell? What did you accomplish? You can see that, especially when you start talking to them.
Yeah, but you know what? I look at, people like us today, though, when we see a fire in somebody that actually has been part of a sales program that's that successful and that big, right? We can learn a lot from it. I tell you right now, when you say this, I look at my own businesses where we've become national providers of our services, and national customers look at us in marketplaces as a great provider and oftentimes a preferred vendor for them, right? That's all great, but guess what? We've lost track in some cases, in some markets, of the regional markets where people know our names, but they're not even calling on us because they think, oh, they're too big. They only do this. When we'd love to do work for that one building owner, right? We'd love to do work for that person that needs us to patch up their parking lot. But we don't get those calls anymore.
Yeah.
So what do we need? We need that. Yeah. We need to build a force of college kids. I believe we can train high school kids to knock on doors to building owners in our marketplace to just introduce who we are, and then give them a cut of that, right? Give them a great percentage in the sales for that, and man, they learn. We then grow a stronger regional market that we've got away from. I used to knock on doors, every door I could knock on in my marketplace, right? Yeah. That's how, like a Cutco salesman as a kid, I delivered newspapers and then did some things, lawn mowing, and I knocked on doors for all that. But then eventually I found myself knocking on doors to pave and, really patch and seal ugly driveways.
Right.
And eventually I got to the point where I can actually afford the equipment to pave those driveways, right? But bottom line is, that experience for me was the most valuable experience in my career even today, because I still knock on doors. I was with Walmart's leaders for a few days a few weeks ago, and had great conversations, gained some nice work with them that we didn't have before. Some things some phases of their business didn't know we did, but that's kind of knocking on doors. But now I'm knocking on the biggest doors in the world.
Right, exactly.
But it's so much fun. And I still say what we've lost is exactly what Cutco has not lost, right?
Yeah.
The ability to provide a great job and a great opportunity for a young person to sell, and they don't have to sell the rest of their lives, but that experience in selling, as you know, is amazing when it comes to the emotional intelligence development of that person and the ability for them to sell that great spouse that they may have someday, that perfect spouse that has all the moral compass they have, the beauty they have. You know, a goofy-looking guy like me can sell when it comes to that, maybe, right?
Well, this is something we can both agree on.
I mean, just we some people say I've outkicked my coverage. My late wife was amazing, beautiful woman, and so intelligent and stuff, and I probably didn't deserve her, right? But I sold myself to her.
Yeah.
My fiance today, Julie's an amazing woman, beautiful woman, smart as can be. And I've outsold my coverage, or however you say, I'll kick my coverage.
I'll kick your coverage.
And again, but again, I believe that's the sales acumen that you learn as a young person. It ingrains in your head, and you use the rest of your life. And whether it's selling to your boss, that you can handle the next job, right?
Yeah.
Selling to those customers as you're growing your business. So it's fun. Okay, so tell us how you had the guts to go on your own, do the business you did, and where it went.
Well,
it was not that long ago, 2011.
So my story is, it's a story I never thought I'd have, but it's a very common story, and I think for that reason it's good to share. I'm pretty private in my personal life, but I think it makes sense to share. So I was married for 20 years, 6 kids, and my faith is important to me too. I went to Mass every single day. I go to Mass every day. So I don't believe in divorce, and was when I tell you, when that comes through your house like a tornado, you only have so much control over it. And I went through that, much to the there really wasn't much of that in my family or with my friends, and so it was it really rocked my world as much as you can imagine. And I was an at-home dinner with the kids guy every day. I did some travel, but I always was very, very diligent about managing my travel to be out of town only for short spurts, so that I was there for all the kids' games and like I said, dinners and everything else. And
that's awesome.
And so when you go through divorce and know 50% of that time is going to be ripped away from you, that's pretty hard. Not to mention the fact that I lost everything financially in the divorce. That was in 2011. So I was about 40-ish at the time. And I had to start over. I mean, I had to start completely over from scratch. So I was living in...
This is soon after leaving Cutco then?
I was still there.
Or you're still at Cutco? Okay.
I was still there. It was like my last year of being there. And I had simultaneously started a few other businesses at that time that I was hoping to maybe jump onto. One of which Cutco actually took issue with, and they asked me to divest myself from, so I did. But others they allowed me to do because they didn't feel threatened by them. My ex-wife got a lot of money and our big home, and I got a 600 square foot cabin with 2 bedrooms where I had to literally build beds in the closet for my kids, 35-gallon water tank, and I slept on the couch. And I had no money, and I was paying more in child support than I was earning. And then when I was, let go from the Cutco business, why does it feel better, even though you were fired, to say let go? Does that feel better?
Definitely a nicer sound.
Is it a better sound?
Softer.
And so what happened was I called a couple of guys that I wanted to start a business with, and I said, guys, we're starting this business. We're doing it now. And in fact, really what it was is one of the companies that I divested from, I reinvested in. And that ended up being Best Version Media. And I turned it into... What
was the vision back then? It was really nothing at that point.
It was doing about $500,000 a year for 5 years.
Very, very small.
Yep. And
making a profit? 50,000,
it was making
100,000 net?
a little bit of a profit.
Okay.
And but I think we hit 100 million within 5 years, maybe 6 years.
I knew it was big growth, but dude, I didn't realize it was that big.
Yeah, it moved pretty
Holy
fast.
cow!
Yeah.
Tell us how that went.
Well, you kind of hit on it. So it was. I went to my business partners and I said, guys, they were much younger than me, not quite as experienced, and I said, I want you to think about everything times 1,000, at least 1,000. Can we do what you just did by 1,000? Because it's super inefficient. We, at that point, have a dozen or so, maybe a little bit more than that, magazines, and just a couple in one primary location. I said, we now need to like incubate this. Well, we're kind of incubated it. Now we need to expand it. So let's try this market, try that market. And so we have a leader-centric business. So basically we went from, a couple magazines to 1,300 magazines. We had a competitor that was at like 200 or 300 at that point. They grew to 1,200. They came back down to 600. And we've never gone backwards. We just keep growing every single year. We've just dominated.
Okay, but how do you? I mean, did you train a bunch of salespeople to go after these marketplaces and start your own magazines or buy magazines? Tell us about that.
Yes, what we did was we developed a program very much like a franchise, but it wasn't a franchise. Here's how you publish a magazine. Here's how you go after the advertisers. Here's how you build content. We're going to do this. We're going to figure out exactly. So we're going to give you a stamped out system. We're going to recruit you to come in as a 1099. We're going to show you exactly how to be the publisher of a magazine, to give them as much power as they could in the role, but in a system that worked. And then just to take that and multiply it as much as we could. The hard part was, imagine this. Imagine starting a print company in 2007. That's when we first started, before I divested for a while and I came back in. Mm-hmm. And even in 2011, when I did come back in, a print company. Everybody was leaving print like it was a burning building.
Believe me,
I literally had people say to me, what are you going to do next? Start a VCR company? They're like, wow, this is really innovative. And I was like, you know what? You're missing what we're doing here. People were leaving print like a burning building because they didn't understand it. They started giving things away for free. So we literally turned print on its head. I remember Jack Griffin, he was the CEO of Trunk, of the Chicago Tribune.
Yep.
And he came out one day because all the media companies were like trying to figure out what the heck we were doing. And at this point he had retired, but he's like, Dave, you literally took print and you turned it on its head. Like all of my peers from, anywhere, from Hearst, from everywhere, none of them would have believed what you're doing. And I think one of the reasons that worked is because I didn't know anything about it. And so I was able to disrupt the industry.
I love it.
Because I didn't think like they thought. And then from there, we did a lot of things that you talked about.
So I'm going to interrupt you really quick. That's something to think about. Chris, as you think about this, and Stephen, as you think about this, I mean, so often the best innovators, the best entrepreneurs in the world are ones that didn't start in that industry, but because they saw everything from the outside and they weren't stuck in their ways, the old school ways, and we've been doing this way for years, this is how it's always been done, they've been successful.
Yeah.
And over and over again, you see this. I'm another big investment I have right now that I'll get you in front of if you want to look at it. It's amazing. It's a company called Lightspeed that's going to change our world. Remember Lightspeed? It's going to change the world. One of my past podcast interviews was Bijou. Bijou started Redbox. Bijou then started a fintech company. Redbox sold for when he was partners for $800 or $900 million bucks. And then they started another company that was successful in a small way. But then I invested in this company called Halo, a fintech company that's now a global fintech company. He uses AI. Again, robotics and AI is his thing. He stepped down as CEO of that company a year and a half ago and said, Gary, I got a vision. I'm going to build this company. We're going to change the world. We're going to build homes 100% in a warehouse with robots. Then we're going to ship them to the job on a truck with a couple robots. And we're going to build the house on site with the robots. Different robots, but they're different design. And he's there now. He's there. I'm a seed investor in that also. And it's going to change the world when it comes to building homes and building things, right? With robots that have the dexterity to be able to basically put nails in, understand that the strength those fingers need to so they don't break the stuff they're putting up, the drywall, the things they're doing, right? But anyway, this guy is in this business, and my friends in construction say, how can he do this? He's never been in the business. Everything he's done, he's never been in that business.
Yeah.
But he interviews, he understands the leaders.
So he hasn't been in the business, which means that he's and he's going into contracting. So he's going to not understand that he's supposed to be late.
Yeah. Robots don't understand that.
Lie, provide bad customer service, and not respond to phone calls. Okay, maybe he'll be.
Exactly.
He stands a chance
Exactly.
if he hasn't been
so
trained.
what you said though makes so much sense because you did this. You weren't in the business. You just got in this business, and people like the Tribune, all these people are saying, "Wait a minute,
what happened?
This can't work, right?"
Yeah.
But like, sorry about that. I wanted to veer off that because what you're saying,
That was a great
I see
riff.
so often, and people are like.
Yeah.
No way, you can't do this. You never did this before. He's never been in the business, right? So continue on. Sorry about that.
Well, then we did some crazy things. So we always had, I had two different things that I would talk. It was informal within the organization, a horizon group. What's on the horizon? What's next, right?
What's next?
And then another thing was we always would joke about how we have this laboratory. It was a fictitious place, but we really did it. It was like there were people in white lab coats always experimenting with crazy things, half of which or more we expect to literally blow up in our faces. So we did things like we tried starting a social media company, which, by the way, was the coolest idea ever. And if I'd have known then how Google and Facebook literally can block everything from ever coming out. I mean, if you're going to start a social media company, you will need the permission of people like Amazon and Google and everybody else to actually have it happen at this point right now. That's just true. Yeah. I didn't know that. I was naive thinking, well, if enough people get excited about it. but it was cool. It was cool. It was called Myopolis. Check this out. So you know how you get this is totally a side thing. This is a business that died, and yet you see my enthusiasm for it because it could have worked. So, and this would have gone back to maybe 2017, okay? But in Myopolis, you know how you get a Facebook or a Instagram or whatever post, and it's like, I don't even want to see that. Like, I don't want your politics because you're my sister-in-law and everything else about you I like, but I just don't want to see that, okay? Yeah. And you're fine with the cat video that she sent, but you're irritated by this, irritated by that. And then you're scrolling through because your homepage has the certain things you do want to see, but it's just filled with a bunch of distracted things. So what happened was every time you posted something, you just put it in one of 7 categories. So you put it in politics, pets, religion, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then what you could do on the receiving end is you can open your feed to all of them. Or what you could do is you could say, I don't want any politics. So I'm going to feel good every time I get this because no politics is going to come through my feed.
Sure.
And if somebody posted something falsely and they said it was sports, but it was really politics, all it takes is a couple of flags for it to go up from people that are receiving it. And then you could also say, well, I want to be open to all things except for Gary's politics. So specifically on Gary, I'm just going to block his politics. Isn't that brilliant?
That happens a lot too, but yeah.
Yeah,
that's
but
cool.
To categorize it, for you to take control over what's going to be fed you was great. But there were some reasons that it didn't take off. So anyway, that went away. And we tried a couple other things that went away, but we started a couple of spin-off companies. So I sold another one of those spin-off companies even before I sold the company for the first time. And then we started a digital services company, which is doing really well now, tens of millions of dollars. Again, non-disclosure, so I can't say exactly what we're doing. But
so you have how many companies today do you oversee today?
Oh, me right now, just 2. I'm the executive chairman still or chairman of the board of Best Version Media, of the original one.
And that's how big now?
I can't say how big it is.
Can't say revenues?
I can't say revenues because
what's with that?
We sold it.
It's private. It's a private business too,
It's a private
right?
business, and we're not allowed to say.
Right,
But it's hundreds of millions.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
That's amazing.
So,
in a dying industry of print.
In a dying industry, and
I love it.
And then here, but see, Gary, I think part of the difference for me now with where I am is for 35 years I've had a passion for teaching, and a passion for writing, and so my main focus is that now. And it's I love business, so I'm always going to sit down and talk to this company. I own part of an airline, which is doing really well. 13th fastest growing private airline in the United States right now.
You introduced me to that a year or two ago.
Yes, in Wisconsin, by the way. They're bigger than NetJets.
And I told you because cheeseheads are running, I couldn't invest in that. Remember that?
Yeah, but see, this is where there's Flatlanders. Flatlander, by the way, is the nice word we have for you guys.
There's a lot of words that aren't so good.
Have you ever heard this, Stephen? Have you ever heard FIB?
You're in Illinois.
Chris, have you ever heard FIB? It's an acronym for Wisconsin people use for people in Illinois, and it's I'm not going to say it because we don't swear on our channel. No, you'd have to bleep it out. But you can figure out what F might be. Illinois bastards. So that was what. But that.
Well, and we get now that
you call us cheeseheads, we call it. We seem a little meaner.
That name has become prevalent because we have a governor we call Fat.
There you go. So from a guy who ran for governor. So you don't have a stake in the game on that.
No,
okay,
no.
I think we're digressing.
No. Okay.
But you should invest though, by the way. I need to talk to you a little bit
more. It's not too late,
huh? No, well, there's another round going, so I'll talk to you about that. But anyway, that's cool. And then other different things, some medical companies, some crazy things like, mining and minerals, stuff that will sit there and lose money or never make any money, or will all of a sudden turn, into worth more than you can possibly imagine.
But you're taking risks. I was on the phone with a buddy of mine that we're going to interview on Ditch Digger CEO. You can interview this guy too. He's amazing. So Charlie Hamilton is his name, but he just was celebrating yesterday with me on the phone. He said, "Hey, guy, I wish you were here in Texas with me." He goes, "I got to celebrate. I got to figure out how to celebrate." He goes, "He just basically got a contract for water rights. It's taken like 6-7 years and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, to he had an aquifer in Texas with amazing water, and it's water that refreshes itself right through the springs on a constant basis, and to the point where they can serve 500,000 people with water,
wow.
right, and never inhibit the aquifer. Okay,
that's amazing.
Anyway, so bottom line is he landed a big contract that'll take up about 15% of that capacity, and he's gotten through all the red tape of the environmentalists and all that kind of stuff.
That's difficult.
So again, he's worked his butt off, risked a ton of money and a lot of time, and with the odds were probably most likely he was never going to get it, but he knew if he got it, it'd be incredible. So mineral rights are incredible if you can get them.
It is, and they keep expanding. So we'll see what happens on that. It's a public company, but without any records. So that if it wasn't, do you know how you're not supposed to invest? It's exactly how I invested. I got this buddy.
I got this buddy.
When it starts with "I got this buddy," you probably shouldn't do it. But for whatever reason, I did with that one. I have this I invest an amount that if I lose, it doesn't matter, and whatever. But so I'm spending most of my time doing this now. So where I am now is very fascinating, and I want to get your take on this too. When you look at why people succeed or fail, most people will say something like, "Well, we couldn't get the financing," or "There was this strange marketing thing that happened," or "I had a partner that did this to me," or recruiting was difficult because of economic circumstances, whatever. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, there was somebody else in that same circumstance that made it happen, which means the common denominator is that person, that individual person. So you would say that it's what is it about them? Is it their leadership? Probably to a large degree. But why is their leadership off? It's because their influence is off. And why is their influence off? It's because their personality is off. And so we're developing a program on optimizing personality.
I like
which is intensely focused on how you increase influence, how you increase your perception while you're influencing others. And then it also is centered on the idea that your ability to influence is going to be contingent upon where you are in happiness.
100%.
As crazy as that sounds.
I agree.
Because you know this, if you've ever had the experience, and I'm going to ask you this because I've done this maybe, I can remember one time I did it in my career. It was pretty deliberate, and I knew what lasting effect that it would had, but I didn't care because I was ready for this, where I was very angry with somebody at work. I was angry like, right now, I'm going to Bill Belichick you at halftime.
Yeah.
Okay? And I know that if I'm like that, and some of these words and the look that comes out of my mouth and the fire coming out of my ears, our relationship was probably severed.
Yeah, you can try your best to hide that. You can't hide it.
And not only that, you can't recover from it when you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what people forget is that great leaders always, even in tough conversations, always keep things optimistic, hopeful, positive, and encouraging. So I've taken some people to the woodshed, some of my key leaders, tough guys that I know, and this is what I say to them. I say, "Listen, guys, I have a challenge that I need to present to you with some of the things that are happening here. Before I do, because it's going to come off pretty strong, I need you to know that the situation we're in would be like if Bill Belichick were correcting you at halftime and the 6th Super Bowl. So what would have to happen for that to take place? You would need to be the best athletes on the best team of all times in order to be receiving the privilege of being corrected by Bill Belichick. So you must know that there is a massive, massive implied compliment to begin with. And I see you that way. I see you as the best, building the best team, leaders that are unbelievably remarkable. This message wouldn't work on the 2nd best team because they wouldn't be man enough to handle it. Certainly we won't work on anything besides that. So the very fact that I'm going to come at you like I am directly, you must hear first and foremost as a compliment, but we got to get our act together.
Now lay it on them. Tell them all they.
And then they're
how
like,
they
you know what?
screwed
I've
up.
never been taken to the woodshed and felt so good in my life. But there's that kind of positive side to it. What is your experience in that, and how do you see this whole idea?
When I'm on my game, it's a love sandwich, right? I mean, it's love in the beginning and it's love in the end, and in the middle, it's addressing the challenge, or the issue you have with them, right? And if you don't really, if you don't love them, you probably aren't gonna call them out. You're probably gonna say, we just got to get rid of this person. Quietly, we just got to figure out how to move this person out, right?
Yeah.
But when these people
Is
work,
a Rabine sandwich anything like a Reuben sandwich?
yeah,
How close is that?
Yeah, Rabine sounds like Reuben. I like that. But bottom line is, I think that if you have people that work every day with for your customers and for the rest of your team, right? You should love them. If you don't, there's something wrong. God tells us we're supposed to love our enemies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we can't love these people that work for us every day, I think we've got a problem as a leader.
Yeah.
That's just me, right? Some people say I'm crazy with that, but I mean, and some people I get to deal with on a weekly basis, a monthly basis. Some of my teammates very seldom, but when I look them in the eyes, I say, I love you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but when you have an issue with them, if you can wrap them in a love sandwich like you would your family member, ever say, man, I love you, and you serve our customers every day, and you're wearing our name on your shirt and your hat. We really appreciate who you are and what you do for us, right, and our customers. But I got to tell you, there's something that's really bothering me, right? And you got to go after that. And then afterwards, did I tell you I love you? I really do love what you're there for. You're there for us every day, and you've been here for 10 years. Thank you so much, right? But that message in the middle has got to be serious, right? And sometimes I want to go to that message right away because I'm so bothered by what happened, right? And I do that, and it doesn't work out so well. And so, or let's say it's a person maybe you're considering maybe firing because of whatever they did. Maybe they lost your trust, right? But you don't fire them for months because you don't feel you can yet. Over that time, they know there's something wrong. You can't, if you're authentic like you are and I am, you can't hide that. They know there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Eventually they find something else, or they just do a terrible job for that 6 months because their heart's not in it either, right?
Yeah.
So to be fair, when you can do what you said, it's way better, right?
Yeah.
Way better.
Yeah. They have to know.
Yeah.
Because, what I always tell people is I said, listen, when you're leading others, you have to think about things that from a perspective you might not consider before. One is you need to think like a criminal. In that, like a great detective is thinks like a criminal in order to solve crimes. So the people you're working with, they're not criminals, but that's a metaphor. And the metaphor is if you give a motivational speech to this person, or you give assignments to this person, and they're super high character person, you don't have to worry about anything. They're just going to manage it on their own. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people that aren't. And the difference between a great leader and somebody that's not, in my experience, isn't that they're always finding the best people all the time, although the inclination for them to be gathered to that person is there, but it's that they actually can make people who are into the best version of themselves. In other words, they're good at instilling higher virtues in people.
Yeah, do you feel like you can teach some of this? Do you feel like you can teach this attractive personality? And attractive personality to me is just somebody that you can tell loves life, that loves what they do. They have a passion for whatever their family, their faith, the business they're in, whether it's with you or not, right? It's attractive personality. It's high emotional intelligence, I feel, is part of that too. Can you teach that, in your opinion?
You can. And I ebbed and flowed on this throughout my lifetime. But ultimately speaking, we're on a continuum in certain things. So there are people who become more extroverted in their life, more open, or more closed, more conscientious or less conscientious, more or less agreeable, more or less neurotic. And so if these things can kind of ebb and flow through life experience, and they do, I mean, if you're beat up in a circumstance, it can make you tougher or it can kill you.
For sure.
If you figure out that you were wrong and you were kind of humiliated due to the fact that you were wrong, you might become a little bit more open to other things because you've learned from that experience. So life forms our personality a little bit. So if life can form our personality, kind of like, I remember one time I had a job in landscaping in college, and I worked out and lifted weights all throughout my high school and college year. But I remember I had to push the shovel constantly, and I always did it right-handed. And I noticed that the upper part of my right chest was way more developed than my left because my circumstance developed that part of my muscle. Well, I thought, well, clearly if my circumstance can do that, I can be more deliberate about what I'm doing. And you were a bodybuilder, so you know how you can like specifically say.
More importantly, I was an expert shoveler. Okay, so
you know shoveling, man.
There's actually a great way to train shoveling, and people don't understand this. You can be like 400 or 500% more productive if you know how to use a shovel the right way.
Yeah.
And if you can go left or right, so your right pec doesn't get bigger than your left pec. Okay.
Right.
So,
or if you're a government worker, you don't have to worry about either one of them.
No, exactly. But bottom line is there's an art to that, and like everything, right? And how you're taught, whether it's personality, it's like. But when you hire somebody and they're our age, let's say your age, my age, right? And we hire any age if they want to be on our team. Sometimes they come with a personality, and I feel like very tough to change, right? If they're 55 years old coming to work in your business and trying to get them to live by your core values and that include positivity and passion, right?
Yes.
So it's tough then. I mean, I feel like if you get somebody in their college years and they're around this culture of positivity,
you can move them a little more.
Almost no problem, right?
So this was an interesting thing because this is how I built the businesses that we had. Even our independent contractors, we only had a 10% involuntary turnover. That's very difficult for independent contractors.
Yeah.
For our employees, we had 2%, and we always were voted best place to work, best culture, and all that kind of stuff. And we were very direct on, let's be the best version of ourselves. Now, that is, there's a lot of companies that say, we're a company of excellence. We believe in excellence. And you kind of you're intimidated to be around it. You're like, gosh, I don't know if I really am. And then as soon as that leader is like, we're a company of excellence and always being on time, and as soon as that dude makes a mistake,
oh, yeah.
Oh, man, he's toast.
But not if that person says, my bad,
Yeah.
I was 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
This is not acceptable, and I apologize for this, right?
That is,
if they can do that, then it's a good example of the culture. But very often,
a great example.
Leaders can't do that, right?
It's very difficult to do it.
I'm guilty myself of that sometimes.
Well, we are. So I think what happens is that we say, listen, we have a standard that is abundantly high. It's like a standard literally of perfection. And there's a bunch of imperfect people in our organization striving for that on a daily basis. And we're going to hit it most of the time. But the times that we don't, we will own our failures in order to have rights to our success. And that's going to happen to me. It's going to happen to you. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to mess up. So am I. I'm going to strive my hardest to never mess up. And if I do, I'm going to own it. I want you to do the same thing. And if you do mess up, I'm going to be compassionate with you, contingent upon the fact that you're owning it.
Yeah.
And you should be compassionate with me, contingent
100%.
upon that. So what we do is we build this environment that actually, so what I've found that most people's personality is like seeds that have not been watered. So they're just waiting for that water to make them grow because they want to be the best version of themselves, but they have no environment or culture to be in like that. And if you draw it out, I don't believe that we transform a complete irresponsible lying loser into an amazing human. That person wanted to work at worst version media, not best version media.
Yeah.
But the people who are attracted to the idea of best version media, culture and all, they always wanted to become better every day. And that never ends. Even somebody that I know you probably liked, maybe not because the fans didn't as much, but Virginia McCaskey, who is a wonderful woman. I like
her. I've met her before, and I was friends with a couple of her sons.
I would imagine. Yeah, I would imagine we
great
have
woman.
some of the similar relationships.
I'm not always I was always a fan of her managing my team, the Bears.
But good people,
just they're amazing people.
Great people.
Yeah, I can tell you great stories about that family because I was friends with one of her second
with
oldest
Pat,
son.
or
I was very good friends with Tim McCaskey.
Okay, with Tim, yeah.
Amazing guy. He was like the Ditka of the family who they didn't want in front of the public, but I believe he would have been the best one. Unfortunately,
he might have been.
He's just Anyway,
well,
great family.
even for a Packer fan to talk about my admiration for the McCaskies as people.
Great Catholics.
But she was, I don't know how old she was when we had dinner at a meeting one time, and I was able to sit with her, and she said she had some sort of comments, and she goes, "I'm working on that." It's like she's late into her 80s and she's talking about what she's working on in her personality. And it was just really, it was like edifying. And it was sincere. You could tell, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of these things where I think that our personalities, we have control over shaping them throughout our lives because, and this is what most people forget, personality deficiencies and excess are derived from vice. So there's the big five. So there's a lot of things. Myers-Briggs, you're familiar. Do you guys ever do that in any of your companies?
We've used it.
Okay, so there's that and DISC and everything else. And they're fun. But scientifically, though, the psychological community uses something called the big five, which is openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeability, and then neuroticism or high emotions. And what happens is they're on a continuum. So Myers-Briggs kind of falls short in a lot of different ways. It's very insightful, by the way. I would tell you that. Some people criticize it. They like to say it's not science at all. It's not insightful. I don't believe that it could last as long as it does and resonate with so many individual people if it was completely useless.
Sure.
So I find there's some pretty good uses in it. But it's not as scientific as the big five because they're on a continuum. You're not just introverted or extroverted or thinking or feeling, and that's what Myers-Briggs puts you in.
Yeah.
But you're in a certain...
You can actually move from one to the other bit, right?
You're kind of open or not open. You're on a spectrum. Same thing with extroversion and whatnot. So for me, a lot of people know me publicly would think, this guy's a total extrovert. Nuh-uh. I'm dead center, extrovert, introvert. And in fact, if there are 10 invitations to go out, I'm accepting 3 of them, okay? I'd accept yours, Gary, every time. But that's because I'd rather be in a little bit more like that. But what happens is, if you think about it, if a person is too talkative, draws too much attention to themselves, wants to go out all the time, they have an excess of extroversion. Mm-hmm. Or if they're recluse, they have the opposite.
Sure.
So what do we need to do? We need to pull that in the middle. What is it if somebody is to this or to that? It's pride on both sides. And it's humility which gets you to say, I'm talking too much, or they need to hear more.
Sure.
It's humility which gets you to say, I should be more open to this, or I should be closed-minded to this because it's wacky. Okay?
Sure.
And that's primarily driven by virtue and vice. And virtue and vice is like the muscles of the intellect and will. So we have power.
And I think if we do a good job finding a match as friends or as a spouse, right? And I believe you hopefully find somebody that helps you, work on whatever, I think they're probably not opposite or not quite opposite of you, right? Yeah. For me, that's how it's been.
I agree.
I've had, my late wife, Cheryl, was not an extrovert. She just wasn't, or not an introvert. Just would listen a lot before she would speak, right? And it was a great trait for her because I was the opposite.
But you and I are the same. But my wife, Miranda, is like, I say it's like having it's like literally a shot of peace every day. She's just so patient and listens,
So Julie, a little the same way, right? She's very, she listens really well, and she's super sharp, and she'll pick up little things, and she'll comment when she needs to, but then she'll also remind me, like any good partner will, what, you kind of interrupted that person when you said this, and think about next time when you say this, I feel like it means something different than you think, right? So, which is awesome because that's what we need, I think, all of us, right? We need somebody we respect next to us, whether it's a great friend, a business partner, a spouse, whatever, that'll hold us accountable. Mm-hmm. We can also hold accountable, right? And I think that's how we learn and grow. So when you look at where you started, you're in this business, a great company that you stuck with for a long period of time. And then you probably were like, gosh, you knew you were an entrepreneur. You had to get out and build something after these amazing lessons you learned, right? And you did that. With some struggle and then some success. You've had amazing success over a short period of time when you think about 2011, 12, and where you are today. Where's the vision? I mean, you're a very young 65-year-old guy now. Okay. And so,
Dude, wait,
so knowing,
you literally you want me to be 10 years younger than you. So you go from 75 to 65.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. Okay. So now, I mean, you got a roadmap ahead of you. And I mean, I'm not sure how I think about myself as I'm never going to retire until I'm on my deathbed. Then I can say, okay, they died because they got, 3 days to live. I guess I'm retired, right?
Yeah.
I believe that's how I'm going to be. I think you're a little bit like that, but tell me about the vision, this vision for you now. You've got all this wisdom so tell me about what your podcast will do for you, writings will do for you, your mentorship. Tell me how the big goal that you're going to have in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Through all
So
this.
for me, it is, I had the drive to be in the boardroom and the drive to build and grow companies. And then I was able to do that. That has not entirely gone, but I have a digital company right now with a great partner. He's kind of like the partners that you have, and he's building that business, and he's doing a really fantastic job, and he's going to continue.
Digital media?
Digital media. SMB, digital marketing firm. So he'll continue to do that, but he's going to be in the driver's seat. For me, I'm going to teach. I'm going to teach, strain, speak. We're going to fill the Dragon Slayer Theater here with all sorts of people who want to come out and optimize their personality.
Would you invite me sometime to listen in?
Oh my gosh, I'll invite you on stage to help actually.
I'm a little too shy for that, but I definitely want to watch.
You're way too shy. If you weren't shy, we're going to teach you some extroversion skills.
Whoa.
And then when we do that, we'll bring you up on stage and see if you can test them out there.
I'm in.
But I definitely, I'm kind of in this like patriarchal mode of my life right now, where that's what I'm going to do. I want to teach. And so I've done this for a long time and have written and studied human performance for decades. And this is the thing that I've loved about it, is I can apply it. I can literally say, if we recruit 100 people and we start teaching this, what happens to the data?
Yeah.
And I know with marketing materials, you can do that. I remember one time we did something very simple in our company where we had like this 4-page printed brochure, even in a digital age, because it was just way more effective in presenting what we were doing, and it gave you more control. And we thought, gosh, too many words in it, not enough pictures. A picture's worth 1,000 words, which is really true. Why don't we make it 8 pages, really remove the words, and get 8 really good visual images of there? Our closing percentage went down 2%. And not any one of the individual 1,000 people in the company would have noticed that.
Yeah.
But we did.
Wow.
And so we looked into why. The reason for it was our presentation blew up to twice the distance in time. Even though the content was the same, the number of pages was longer, so people felt like they had to talk more about it. And gosh, in concept, it was a great idea. I say that because it was mine.
Yeah.
And yet in practicality, it was horrible and it didn't work. And so you have to basically say, okay, well, my idea or not, that's a bad one. And we removed it. Well, with human performance, you can do that too. You can say, if we teach this virtue more, and what it looks like and how to emulate it, and we embed that into the organization. And the way you know that is that when you get on a conference call that is led by somebody you haven't even met in the company, 5 states away, and they give a call, they start talking about it. And they don't even know you're the one who said it the first time. And it's whispered down the lane 3 months later. And so when you embed those things in, you see performance increase, you know that you're making actual change in people's personalities. And then you know how you really know? You meet their spouse on a company trip, and they tell you, my husband or wife is a different person.
Yeah.
And so while I was able to do that, most people's language about this sort of thing is very like clinical. They've got in books with some of the big time authors. They've read Atomic Habits or they've read something like this. So I basically am taking material that's been around for millennium, all the way back to Aristotle, up through the most contemporary authors today who disagree about a lot of things. And what's the common pattern in each one of them? Because those can't be wrong for 2,000 years. And I'm embedding those in. But you know what also is shocking, Gary? When people talking about changing personality And they never, at least mainstream, ever talk about God's grace. I know, for example, my uncle Conrad, who just recently died. He was a commander in the Navy. He was a teacher and a coach, and he is very tough guy. I mean, when you say commander in the Navy, that's kind of how.
Yeah.
He used to give me a buzz cut. When he came over, he would cut our hair as kids, and I was panicking. And he's very tough, and always a good man, and always charitable, but just tough and not really soft or kind. And everybody would have said that.
Mm-hmm.
And about 10 years before he died, he was sitting in church, and the priest gave a message saying that the Holy Spirit can change your life if you just invite him in. And he did it.
Get out. And how old?
He was probably 68, maybe 70.
Okay.
And instantaneously, everyone who knew him,
that's awesome.
Everyone who knew him saw a remarkable change, a perma smile, a happy this, a happy that, a no big deal this, in ways that never would have happened. Now, most people have to like grunt their way through a change of personality like that. God's grace changed him instantaneously. So my audience, whether it be completely secular, all Fortune 500, I'm going to teach them every single human nature oriented, scientific backed, non-grace oriented approach, because many of them work and they work quite effectively. But why am I going to leave that one out if it can actually supercharge it? So those people who opt out of that, fine. But you might want to just play with that one for a little bit.
For sure. You know, and I look at, you know, great leaders do things all different ways, right? And I see value in so many different types of leadership. But, you know, I've chosen to always talk about why I love God, right? And I've had HR people say, you know, Gary, you probably don't want to go there so much. Says, why? I mean, my love comes from that. And if I can't talk about that, who am I? I'm not hiring people because they believe in God or my faith or my Catholic faith. I'm hiring people because they have a passion to serve my customers, passion to serve each other, which means they probably have a passion that comes from somewhere else to serve, and that's what I like, right? That's what I want. Now, it doesn't matter where they get it from. I want their passion to be here to serve, right? And I believe that with God's grace, we're going to serve a lot better than we would without it. And so again, to not talk about that as you make decisions in your business, or in my opinion, is wrong. It's not being fair to your teammates who really should know who you are.
If you're doing it right, you are completely doing it in a non-imposing but proposing way.
Exactly.
Where if they opt out of the proposal, totally fine with me. Yeah. I didn't say that for me. I said that for you. And by the way, I already know you're killer in what you do, and I love having you here.
Exactly.
And you have a completely different vote than me. You have a completely different lifestyle than me. But you know what? On this team, we're killing it together, and I'll take a vote for you.
100%. And the same with the politics. So with politics, nobody guesses who I am politically, why I think the way I do. And I don't impose it on my teammates. You don't have to be a conservative to work in my company, any of our companies, right? Yeah. To be a partner of ours, right? I just want to know, this is who I am. This is why I make the decisions I make. This is why our culture is built the way it is. Yeah. And if you respect that, you're good. And I think that, again, I think we lose track if we listen to law. And God bless HR, our HR teammates. They're really there to protect us, like our lawyers are, right? But if you have to worry about every little thing and you can't be who you are and you can't be authentic, how are you going to build a culture?
Well, the interesting thing too
is
how the opposite side is never told to not say that. Like they're fine. Oh yeah, bring in that idea and thought into HR. In fact, let's train people on it and force them to believe it. Where you're like, I'm not even trying to do that, and you're telling me to.
Exactly.
That's a crazy thing.
So Chris is going to get. I want Chris to get involved here and talk about a few things. But hey, Chris. So what we do in our podcast is at the end, way better than your podcast, okay? What we do in our podcast is in the end, we basically go over what we've learned, a few things we've learned. And what I heard over and over again, and Chris...
Hey, can I go first?
Chris does this more than anybody. No.
Nothing.
No,
I'm kidding.
No, you can't go first.
No, it's a joke. I was literally going with... I didn't learn anything, Gary.
No, here's what I learned, right?
You're so busy being charitable over there.
Something I love about this guy, Chris, and that you'll hear it, constantly. I know Stephen hears all the time, right? It is this mentality of what's next, right? Whether in business, in life, and whatever. If I'm a customer of yours, I'm asking you, what's next? What do you got for me next, right? If I'm your spouse, I know that you're gonna constantly perform well for this spouse, and she's gonna say, okay, dude, what's next? That's old news. What's next? And they can rely on the fact that you are gonna always be a guy that's gonna always raise the bar, always gonna do the best you can to be the best you can be. And I think our customers deserve that, our friends deserve that, our spouse, our family deserves that, right? And I think God expects that of us, right? And so I love that about Chris. I love it about Dave, Chris, because I'm confident that his success is because of that, and constantly striving to be the best he can be. And tell me about some of the stuff you got out of this, Chris.
Yeah, this was awesome, you guys. I wrote a freaking whole page of stuff. If my first one was from Gary. If you can't find the right partner, just do it on your own. I think you just gotta charge through. And this one's from Dave. Money's only good for the good it can do. I think that's a really powerful way to frame wealth. Think about everything from a 1000x standpoint. And after you start a print company, start a VCR company. Key to success. Disrupt the industry by thinking different than they thought, and think like a criminal to solve crimes. Dave, if I can ask you a question as well, how did you know that local magazines were the move?
So what happened was, in magazines, almost all of the big companies started putting everything online for free. And, why in the world would you buy something that you get for free? So that lent them just to advertising, and they didn't know how to sell that type of advertising. And that advertising wasn't as effective, especially locally, as much as it was, nationally. So there were some problems, and people started running from it. Not to mention the fact that there was a quasi time where people were a little uncomfortable reading that sort of thing. They were no longer around, but they were uncomfortable reading that sort of thing. So it was kind of like mid-level. So that you only have to have a company go backwards like 10% before they feel the financial pain, and they might have to be able to endure it. So even though people were gravitating toward wanting to read things online, that pullback was just enough to make them feel the pain, but they weren't able to ramp up fast enough here. Now, most of them did it, by the way, and you see that eventually they got there, and they innovated, and they did other things. But local magazines really got crushed. And the reason local magazines got crushed is because most of them were built on a lie. This is kind of a long answer, but if you had like this local city magazine, they would say something like, we have a distribution of 250,000. And but they had audit reports, because if you're going to sell advertising, you have to prove that's true. So we'd get their audit reports. And they were a subscription magazine with 250,000 readers. Well, literally one of those companies printed 40,000 copies, but they claimed to have 250,000 because they would drop them off at doctors' offices and places like that. And there was a certain number of people who would read them. They had 318 people that actually subscribed to the magazine. 318. What they would do is, have you ever gotten a magazine you didn't subscribe to?
Sure.
Like Golf Digest or Money Magazine or something? Yeah. The reason is they'll take your profile, and if it looks like their demographic, they'll send out 10,000 free copies to you, but those are subscriptions. They don't call them free subscriptions, but they say that it's going to 15,000 subscribers, but only 318 are actually invested readers who buy it. Mm-hmm. So that started to crumble and fade. And then the free magazines also crumbled and faded. So they would sell, you'd go to like a Denny's, and there was a big stack of like magazines right outside of it, but nobody really picked those up, or if they did, where were they from? We didn't even know where they were from. So we changed it, and we built a model where you can know exactly who's getting your magazine, exactly when they're getting their magazine, and we found that 89.4% of the people that got the magazines opened them.
Wow.
And so that data was pretty powerful. I do want to say, because this is a joint show, that I learned so much with Gary every time that I'm with him. And if I may say, that the thing that I come away with always from you is that, so I had a CEO company that I'm invested in, where he said, he's got this one person who's a partner in the business who should know better, that was supposed to solve a problem. And if they didn't solve the problem, their company was going to close down. So the CEO is going to his partner and he's saying, is this done yet? And he's like, well, I checked. I emailed the people who are supposed to help. He's like, you emailed them? He goes, you got to be kidding me. And he goes online. He solves the problem in like literally 5 minutes. And this is the type of thing that, like, when you're a CEO or you're a leader, you need to bite down on the solution until you have it.
Yeah.
And that is something that comes out from you so clearly, whether it's a personal part of your life, whether it's the way you help society, whatever it happens to be. When you see there's a problem, you will bite down on that until it is solved. And I think you don't ever say that. That's not something I've heard you say, but anybody who's around you, I think is probably pulled up to that level of resolve to get something done because you like exude it, but you also exude it with joy. And that's the thing that I think it makes people stick around. Because when you're doing very difficult things like you do, and you're running so many different businesses like you do run, and so many different people are in charge, you can make everyone you're with feel incredibly important. You like Gary Rabine, that's something you're good at. You make everybody you're with feel important, but incredibly challenged. That's a mixture that's very, very difficult. And I think if people can observe that in you, they can emulate it.
Well, I think that my blessing is that I wasn't built to be an executive. I really wasn't built to be a CEO or whatever you want to call me, right? A chairman, whatever. I was built to get stuff done with my hands, right? And get dirty. And so I like that. Love doing that all my life. It's actually not always a good thing because now I will jump in things and jump into different challenges and I'll get involved sometimes further than my teammates want me to, right? They'll say, okay, Rabine, okay, get out of this now. You've helped enough, now get away from us, right? Yeah. And I got to respect that because they're right. I mean, I like going to the root of the problem and actually helping solve it when it comes to business issues. And sometimes I think it's good, but I need to know when to pull back too. And so I'm a better doer, I'm a better shoveler of asphalt and an operator of heavy equipment than I am an executive, right, trying to teach people how to do these things. So,
yeah, I think the very fact that you state that and that you're aware of it means that the way that comes off with your people, and because you're in those experiences, but you're anybody who's willing to roll up their sleeves, okay, but then willing to say, okay, I get it, I'll walk away. That's pretty darn inspiring. Mm-hmm. I had a guy one time. He was in the Cutco business. We needed a flyer and poster to recruit college students as much as we can. It was the worst part of the job. You're going to college campuses, put flyers out, and people are like want to brush you away as the Cutco person and stuff like that. So it was like humiliating and everything else. You just had to do it. And for a while there was these signs we'd put out, like realtor signs at street corners, and they were like illegal. And
use them everywhere. Yeah,
right. And that was just not fun to do that sort of thing too. And he calls me up as this seasoned executive, just like in the twilight, not at a time where, even though he started that way. And he calls me up and he says, hey, I can meet you tomorrow at 7:00 if you want to go do flyering. And I remember saying, no way. There is no way I'm going to have you do that. But I know that was sincere. I know he would have showed up. Sure. And that just reminded me, I will never be above the most basic task in any organization I lead.
Big disadvantage in leadership when you're not, when your team doesn't feel like you're willing to do it yourself. When you ask something. The last thing I got out of this, Chris and Stephen, is I'm going to be on his butt now because I'm going to sponge off of him how we take our regional business and our paving business and grow the strength of our name brand by building a force of probably W-2 college kids. 1099, that's right, 1099 college kids, right, to be able to sell parking lots and sell all the things we do because it can be so lucrative to them and us, right? Because we can pay a lot. I think I'm gonna check out what Cutco pays and start recruiting them now that you let me know the talent that's there. We'll have that meeting.
Don't tell Cutco; they're going to be very, very defensive.
I'm kidding.
So you know what? From our portion on Durand On Demand, I'm going to thank Gary for being a guest who interviewed me more than I did him on this particular show, no doubt about it. And then I'm going to thank you for being a guest on your show.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your friendship first, and then Chris, really appreciate having this character on. Huh? He's another all-star, and Ditch Digger CEO really focuses on people that got to be top 1% in their industry that really started from small beginnings. And this guy has exceeded all expectations of anybody that met him in the past, I'm sure. And this guy, come on, really, this guy, can he really be this successful? And we find out, absolutely, he is. So
it is a shocking thing that people know me.
So thank you. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Stephen.
Until next time, Ditch Digger CEO. See ya.